fantastical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another week of the Patron Feedback Show, the podcast where we speak to patrons about their thoughts on Saturday Night Live, and they co-host the podcast with us. We talk SNL social media, and we answer lots of questions from you in the community of SNL. So thank you for joining us. If you're joining us live right now, we are live on YouTube and Thursday afternoon, talking about everything from the Kieran Culkin and Ed Sheeran episode. And if you're listening after the fact, I hope you enjoy our conversation with two very special patrons joining us. They co-host a podcast together that is Saturday Night Vibes, which you should definitely check out. And joining us first is Greg Croak. Greg, how are you?
Doing just delightfully. Thanks for having us, John.
It's an absolute pleasure. Greg, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
So, as you mentioned, co-hosting Saturday Night Vibes with my other delightful co-host, Emily Mackimer. So longtime SNL fan who found some community through Emily as another deep nerd, and I've been potting about the show for the last 2 seasons as part of a pandemic byproduct.
Yeah, I certainly get that. Is that a verb, potting? I've never heard that before.
If it isn't, it is now. I think we can declare
it now. We've made it. All right. Hashtag potting. Okay. Yes. Joining us also is Emily Mackimer, the co-host of Greg on the Saturday Night Vibes podcast. Emily, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Emily, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So like Greg said, we met post-college through friends and kind of bonded over a shared love of the show. There was more than one time where we were out at a bar on a Saturday night, and we're like trying to rally everyone home to watch the show, and no one was into it, but Greg and I were. And then we had talked about doing the podcast for I feel like a long time, and then last season we made it happen.
Okay, so I didn't realize that you two knew each other in real life. Like a lot of people in the SNL community, they meet each other online. So you two actually knew each other before this.
Yep.
Throwback, just like the old days. Yeah.
Are there any funny stories like how you two met each other or anything like that?
I was roommates with Greg's now wife, then girlfriend, and we were like a Craigslist roommate situation. So it could have gone really bad, but however many years later, it's still a good situation. So
okay.
Yeah, I remember specifically because that instance of us, this was very soon after college, so still extremely hip. Versus now, where we're just painfully boring.
Yeah.
But we, not out of the question that we'd all like go out to the bar on Saturday night, but we were like trying to rally people out of there. And I specifically remember, I think it's 2012, the Jason Segel episode when he was hosting.
Right.
We were like very specifically like, we have to get out of here because he's promoting the Muppets.
The chance for Muppets. And we were like, we can't miss this.
There was going to be a chance for Muppets in the monologue, and I don't know. I don't want to be stuck out here when that's happening. So that one I very specifically remember.
Yeah, I remember that one because I was a big How I Met Your Mother fan at the time. So which did not end the way I wanted it to, but I was very excited for Jason Segel to host, and that was really fun. So that's really, really cool. Okay, well, it's just such a pleasure to have the two of you on. It's really fun. This is the first time we're getting to do this on the Patron Feedback Show, is have two people who co-host a podcast together come on with us. So I'm excited to hear your opinions, and obviously for our listeners who haven't had a chance to listen to your podcast this season, I'm sure they would love to know what you think of season 47. So Emily, can I start with you? What are your overall thoughts on the season so far?
I think it's super strong so far. Every time we talk about it, I feel like we're farther into it than we are. I think it's going really well. And I was watching, I can't remember what show it was of yours, and definitely echo the sentiments. I really think we're getting set up with this current cast to just have like some really good seasons ahead. I think this one's going really strongly. Greg and I talk all the time about how kind of like there's a new old guard coming in with Heidi Gardner and Kyle Mooney, people, who you have thought have not been on for that long are kind of now super seasoned and regulars. And I'm happy with the season so far.
Okay. Sure. That's great. Greg, what about you? What are your thoughts on season 47 so far?
Yes, same kind of thing. I mean, we were talking about this, the dynamic of, when do the newbies sort of become part of the establishment is kind of hard to determine, but I feel like we know it when we see it, and specifically with people like, Heidi, 80 Bryant,
Yes.
a couple others, that it's like now that the crowd is really rooting for them, the in studio crowd, it feels like even when Heidi's, not necessarily carrying the sketch, she's getting laughs out of everything she's saying. And that's something that I think, Keenan's been doing that for a decade. Even if a sketch is dying, they're still really rooting for him. Kate McKinnon is the same way. So that's sort of really what stuck out to me, in addition to the fact that we've potentially have a new young superstar in James Austin Johnson.
Yeah, that has been just a huge story. And I was, trying to think about what the Heidi upturn has been in this season, because a lot of people, like I keep saying, I think it's underrated how well Heidi is doing this season. And I almost compare it to, I don't know if either of you are like fantasy sports people, but
Yep.
I think so, Greg. So I think this is one of those situations where Kate McKinnon is like the star running back on a fantasy football team,
Mhm.
and she is not there. And Heidi Gardner is like the handcuff backup.
Yes.
And like Heidi's amazing, and she does her own stuff, and she's been killing it on Update, and she's had some really good shows, but like she is stepping in as like an absolute like first round draft pick this season, because she's so much more involved filling the gap that we're missing from not having Kate there.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like once Kate McKinnon comes back from injured reserve, we're going to keep Heidi on the bench. We're not going to
No, I don't want that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, it's like that was like a really exciting story to see. But that's probably, I mean, obviously Cecily had like an amazing night on Saturday night, definitely MVP and incredible stuff she was doing on Update, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But the season other storyline has been kind of a disappointing season for the women of SNL. And that's something that we've been seeing a lot from, our followers and people who talk to us, is like, what's going on with all of the women? We had interesting situations where Sarah, the newbie, is the one newbie who like wasn't really getting a lot of screen time. Chloe Fineman was like set up to be in a really good spot this season and hasn't been there. Obviously, we got a good night from Ego on the weekend, so I don't know that I would throw her in that category. But I just find that the season has actually, we've seen like a lot of female-centric seasons in the last few years, and it's turning into a very male-centric season. And I'm not really sure what's causing that. Emily, do you have an opinion there?
That's interesting, because I haven't really noticed that outright, but now that you say it, I totally agree. I mean, especially with the newbies, right? Like Greg and I were talking last week on our show, like, what do we have to do to see more of Sarah? Like, we're 5 shows in, it's like we feel like she should have really been given a chance, and she hasn't been. And even like Punky, I feel like had some really strong stuff last season and hasn't really been given too much of a chance. I don't know the reason for that, especially because, I mean, as we see, when you put the women out there, like you did, Cecily, on Saturday, like there's a pretty significant, response, and people are wanting. So I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah. Part of me has to think that there is a correlation between the fact that we've had 6 out of the 7 hosts that are booked, at least up to this point, are male. So I think that's definitely part of it. But like conventional wisdom is that you would think with, a male host, there would be more roles for female cast members to work side by side with them. I don't know. I'm finding this whole thing puzzling, and I don't know that we've nailed down what the reason is yet. Greg, do you have an opinion?
No, I mean, I think someone on your show had talked about after the Jason Sudeikis episode that it was like a little bit of a kind of a brotastic episode. And
yeah, we get a lot of that recently.
It does seem, he brings certainly a brotastic energy that I think people like, and maybe can talk ourselves into justification for that particular episode, but that being whatever 20% of the season at this point maybe plays a significant role in that. Thinking a little bit, didn't Melissa Villasenor had an update piece cut? Sarah Sherman was in a sketch in the Halloween episode that was cut. So just kind of wondering about that a little bit. If there's just something there that this is being a little maybe charitable to the show, of something about the time's running long and we got to get the host and Brandi Carlile is running long and something like that. So don't want to let the show off the hook in that way. But you know, I feel like they've been some of the first to be cut, and hopefully there's sort of a course correction forthcoming.
Yeah, I think so. And also, look, I'm all about the good vibes that we're getting from the show, and vibes being the opportune word here, because I know that you two are about, you know, talking about the good things that we get to see from the show. So I don't want to be super negative, but I will say that this is like a little bit of a point that I'm definitely seeing from the SNL community is like, hey, we're really loving what we're getting to see. There's just this like one aspect of the show that has been a little bit off so far, and I wonder how they're going to adjust as we go forward. So, Emily, you know, because you two like to talk about, you know, all the good things and have positive vibes about the cast members, is there something in particular that stood out to you so far in season 47 that you want to touch on as being like extremely good vibes?
Extremely good vibes. Let's see. We're always finding the good vibes, Greg and I. But let's see. I think that this, you know, takes kind of 180 from the female point that we were talking about, but obviously James Austin Johnson has just had such a phenomenal rookie year so far. I mean, like, just I think it's awesome that, and you know, obviously he was established online as a comedian and doing some of these impressions, but I think it's wonderful that they are putting so much faith in him to have him be in how many cold opens has it been?
Everyone,
5 or 6?
Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
Cool. Yes. So, I mean, that's just, he's obviously like had a great time. And it's like, it's not even like I feel like they're leaning on him unnecessarily. It's just that he's really capable and they're seeing that and they're giving that to him. So I think, you know, that's been positive. I think that no disrespect to Alec Baldwin. I love Alec Baldwin, but I think we needed a new Trump. I think, you know, after the election and just like the heaviness of the last couple of years politically with Trump, I think, we really need to see a new impression there, and everyone is so stoked with his. So I think that would have been a highlight for me, among other things.
Yeah, I think that every single time you think James Austin Johnson is done being in a cold open, he says,
"You know what? Could I get 60 more seconds, please?"
comes right back.
Yeah.
So Greg, you brought it up before as well. So what were your thoughts on seeing JJ again in the cold open, just as Trump completely just dominating?
Amazing. Emily called me out on this, that I was not like as deep into the JJ Trump world pre SNL as I have been claiming to be, because I've now gobbled up as much of the sort of walking around LA pieces that he's put out. But it's just, and I think we also sort of, in fairness to Alec Baldwin, you know, it's just the time being what they are now, I think is just so much more. There's so much more to dig into and what's actually funny about Trump versus, you know, the times he was just kind of actively destroying the pillars of society week to week. So I think there was just kind of, you know, the cold opens are sort of what the show has been forever. And I thought he did a perfectly fine job. And I kind of liked the, you know, just having the celebrities play all these crazy characters we were learning every week. Yeah, even if it wasn't something to laugh about most
You
of the
did
time.
like that. You liked it when SNL brought in all these outsiders.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, the cold opens have not been what's drawn me to the show through the Trump era. So
Okay.
I put that out there, not to make it seem like everything is positive all the time. But I felt like there was at least kind of a crutch to get us through the dark times of like, oh, okay, great, here comes Matt Damon. Okay, great, here comes, you know, whoever it is that week. So, but now times being what they are, having this sort of now that he's at least temporarily and hopefully forever more of like kind of an outside popular character, to have the way that JAJ has found a way into the mindless rabble is electric. It's just like absolutely laugh out loud hysterical versus before it's more sort of, you know, we're just kind of white knuckling our way through this
Yeah. And I think like the thing is you guys can relate as SNL podcasters, you try and come up with, what are we going to talk about this week? What was interesting from the show? And it is tough to consistently say, hey, our number one story of the week is that this new player is crushing it on the show, because people want, new takes and new content and stuff like that. But it is what it is. Like, it's what the show is doing. It's just absolutely fascinating to see this historic season from a first year player, something that we haven't seen in at least like 20 years, probably 30. Like, I don't know. It's just really crazy where the heights that this can get to. So I'm excited to see where it's going to go. And I hope that people aren't tired of hearing us gush over JAJ, because not everything he's going to do is going to be perfect, but so far so good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have been kind of tracking this a little bit with, at least statistically, have we seen anything like this before? And it seems like we're getting a lot of comparisons to the way Dana Carvey opened the show, with maybe a couple others. I don't know if you have any of the sort of the statistical analysis of someone coming on and immediately having this big of an impact.
The closest comparisons that seem to be not only in like the eye test, but also in the data is Daryl Hammond and Dana Carvey. But the difference between Daryl and Dana is they both came on right as the cast had complete changeovers for the most part. Maybe less so Daryl than Dana, but that was a major era change when Daryl Hammond joined the show. This is not. This is like right in the middle of like it's barely a transition. We lost Beck. That was it. Right. And you had somebody come in. And so what the difference is here, it's actually almost more exciting to me, because it's like, hey, we know what we have and we're okay keeping some of these people around, but we're going to make structural changes behind the scenes. And the fact that they're willing to make those changes and we get to see them play out and they're being so successful is what is exciting me in season 47.
Yeah, super interesting, because it feels like that kind of excitement around the show of sort of, let's not crown anybody, the greatest of all time when they're 5 episodes in, but it does feel like I kind of want to. Do that.
I mean, rookie of the year for sure.
Yeah.
At least he's getting that right now. So, okay, Greg, any other good vibes that we should talk about so far from the season?
The only other thing that I'm thinking about is just the carryover of the joy Bo and Yang is bringing to the show every week. Particularly in the Rami Malek episode, he really carried everything with the bug assembly, and is that also the Oompa Loompa this week with the men's bathroom. It's just sort of, he's got such a wide range of, we're going to play these over the top sassy characters, and then sort of something a little bit more straight down the middle this week. So continuing to watch him bring his energy to the whole squad.
Yeah, Emily, any interesting thoughts you have on Bowen so far?
I mean, we are big Bowen fans. I think, he's another one where it still seems like he's so new, but with the amount of sketches he's done and the amount of like ridiculously funny stuff he's put out there, he's not so new anymore. He's becoming, an established player. And I think that, especially the fact that he, came up with the idea for the bathroom, like sketch, and we're seeing kind of him not only, being able to really carry these sketches, but, originate them as well, I think is great. And we also, Greg and I talk a lot about Ego. We like sort of, those are our two, like, I feel like she had an amazing season last year. I think that she's becoming one of those cast members that's a little bit in the vein of Keenan, where she can play the host. She can play like the straight guy. She can obviously be the center of a sketch like she is in the Dion Warwick talk show. So I think those two characters are kind of like top of my list right now, like where I feel like they're really getting super established, and I'm so excited to see them continue.
Yeah, they both feel like major parts of the core of our next, big cast of the show. So that's really exciting. I do want to bring up, Greg, you asked for a stat, and we have our stat guru, Mike Murray, who works with us, and he put out a stat this week. He said, this is from the last 3 seasons. He says his first 5 episodes of their rookie seasons. So any new cast members that have come out, what their screen time is for the first 5 episodes. James Austin Johnson, by far in the lead, 25 minutes of screen time in the first 5 episodes. The next two, Bowen Yang and Ego Wodem. So 9 minutes and 8 minutes. Obviously a major difference there, but they have been, above and beyond the rest. And then the order is Lauren Holt, Chloe Feynman, Sarah, Aristotle, Punky, and then Andrew. So, it just goes to show you how great James is doing. And if we've seen the trajectory of Bowen and Ego so far, it's only crazy to imagine the trajectory of somebody like James as well. So really exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So want to ask you before we get to our social media, your thoughts on this episode we got to see this week. So Kieran Culkin and Ed Sheeran were in. And Greg, how did you feel about the 5th episode of the season we got to see?
We felt pretty positive about it, although that's generally our sensibility. One of the things that after this week we had realized right as we were wrapping up, we hadn't talked about Kieran Culkin at all throughout the entire show. But this is also, we just really love the cast and what they were bringing to it, and that wasn't necessarily meant as shade toward Kieran Culkin, but I felt like they had put him in really sort of good facilitating roles. He didn't really other than the horse pre-tape, they didn't really ask him to do anything too over the top or really carry anything. So I think that's always a good way to set up the cast to really flex their muscles. And I love the men's room sketches we had talked about. Love the Dion Warwick talk show deeply and completely. We had a number of great sort of moments and update, obviously, that I'm sure we're going to dig into. So felt great about it. One of my favorites of the season so far.
Yeah, it's just the show continues to get better and better. It's really crazy. I did not have the strongest of expectations for this episode, and I was pretty open about that on the Hot Take Show, but I was just so blown away at what we got to see on Saturday. Emily, how did you feel about the 5th episode of the season?
I would agree with Greg. It's wasn't the strongest host we've seen this season, certainly, but I think they did, as Greg said, gave him just stuff that he could handle, and it wasn't a disappointment at all. Not one of my favorite episodes of the season so far, but I think we had really strong sketches in the men's bathroom sketch and the Dion Warwick talk show. I mean, Greg and I were talking, we hope that becomes the next, we're saying it's not quite like What's Up With That, but what were we comparing it to? Which other?
The Barry Gibb talk show.
The Barry Gibb talk show, yeah.
I mean, obviously a talk show and a name, but it's similar kind of, not really an impression as much as it is, let's get us through like this really wacky pattern,
Yeah. I mean, and I was surprised that they brought it back this soon, honestly, and I'm so glad that they did. I hope it becomes a staple sketch.
Yeah, I think that the main difference between those is, I would say, because I think Jimmy was only a cast member for one of the Barry Gibb talk show stuff, and then it was all like cameo appearances after, so it was like always a very big deal when they did it. This seemed to be, to me, this was more in vein of like the Miley Cyrus show, the Vanessa Bayer one. I think that was probably more like that for me. It's, a newer cast member showing off their chops and then having, eventually, I think Miley came on as Justin Bieber like early in that run. So it's like here we had Dion Warwick come on as herself. So I kind of see that there. Emily, I am curious. You said this wasn't your favorite episode of the season. Which one was your favorite episode of the season?
I think so far, I had super high hopes for Jason, and I wished that they had given him more to do. I know it's kind of like it was wishful thinking that we would bring back so many of his like strongest characters, but I feel like they could have done so much more with Jason Sudeikis in there, and they didn't. So I think I really enjoyed the Rami Malek episode.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that was Rami himself that made, but I just thought, there were so many offbeat sketches in that one that I think that might be my top at the moment so far.
Yeah, Greg, do you have a favorite also?
I was probably going to say the Rami Malek episode too. Emily and I are both drawn to usually the later in the show and the weirder in the show it gets, and I still think they probably could have brought even more weirdness to the show with Rami Malek, but especially incorporating him into the Angelo sketch and the Cut for Time, Please Don't Destroy with him. I think we really loved too. So I'm just a big Rami Malek fan. Mr. Robot,
Cool.
one of my all time favorite shows. The guy just hypnotizes you. So I think that was probably again, Jason Sudeikis too. What up with that? Probably my favorite recurring.
Yeah,
sketch
it's hard
of all
when you
time.
have so many good choices. So
Yeah.
that's I totally
Almost
get
have.
where you're coming from. Okay, so let's talk some SNL social media. So these are things that happened in social media this week. We usually talk about different alumni and what they are saying. So I'll read out some of the social media that we got to see, and then Greg, Emily, jump in and let us know what you think about what people are saying. And let's start off. We just spoke about the Dionne Warwick talk show, and obviously, this all came from social media. Dionne Warwick, getting on Twitter and interacting with brands. Like, how cool was that? And she was always tweeting at Keenan and at SNL. So, do you guys follow Dionne Warwick on Twitter?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although I
She's
wouldn't say that
unbelievable.
I started following her until the first time this sketch appeared.
Absolutely. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so funny because there's obviously like a huge amount of following of people who don't, know anything about SNL, but absolutely love Dionne Warwick. And we're just like freaking out this week. That was really funny to see on Twitter.
Yeah.
But so here we had Ego Nwodum tweet out an absolute highlight of my life and career. My heart is bursting. Love you forever, Anna Dresden and Allison Gates, for helping me birth this sketch. Thank you, Dionne Warwick, for being you. That is very, very good. Please don't wake me up. I'm loving this dream too much.
You're right, John, that it's like, we were talking about this a little bit this week it's amazing that they're able to like just put this entire idea together as like the visualization of her Twitter. Cause this is like the vibe of her Twitter. She's just sometimes just using Twitter to like Google things, it's just like, how do I get this? How does this work? How does this, it's just like such a great earnest, voice of sort of an elderly social media user, and the fact that Dionne Warwick herself, for someone who's been a celebrity as long as she has, is just like such a sweetheart. I think it's hard to be in the public image as long as she has and avoid some sort of major scandal. I feel like so it's just like such a great target for this conceit.
I think she did. I think she has had scandal. Like, I think she did get arrested at one point too. Like, I think she was like carrying drugs on a plane or something like that.
We forgive her. We don't
Yeah.
mind. She's forgiven, Dionne. We're good.
All right, well, we'll run that back. I'll make sure I don't die on the Dionne Warwick hill.
I mean, there's really nothing I love to see more than cast members in general going on, Twitter, Instagram after the show and talking about their favorite sketches and, like maybe like who helped them write it and who was a big part of making it happen. But especially when they feel like when you see Ego just being like, this is a dream come true, like a highlight of my life. It's maybe I'm just a cheese ball, but that's just like so good to see that like this got put together and they got Dionne Warwick on and like she got to do this. And I just love seeing that.
I feel like there is like a little bit of a correlation between like the older you are on Twitter, the more people like you. Like, it's like if Betty Weiss got on Twitter, like Twitter would explode. Like everyone would just be so excited. So I think that Dionne being on, I think she's 80. Yeah, I think her being on Twitter is just very exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
So let's get to one of her tweets. She tweeted out, "I had fun at NBC SNL, star eyes face. Thank you to at Eggy Boom, me crying face, playing me, I guess. Punky Johnson as at Brittany Warwick. And to the writers, cast, and crew, I had a wonderful time with you all. 4 kissing faces and 3 star faces."
Those are such excellent tweet readings to be able to encapsulate all the emojis in there. I'm
it's pretty
seriously
seamless.
impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, people have to get the context of what we're saying.
No, totally.
So that was really exciting. Okay, so let me ask you, I mean, we spoke a little bit about Kieran Culkin. Did you like this moment?
Me, I want uppies.
I tell you what. Yeah, go ahead.
So we're a positive podcast. As soon as I heard that, I was like, how am I going to not talk about how that made my skin crawl on the podcast? I managed. I didn't, but
Well, do it here though. That's the thing, is that on your podcast you have to be good vibes,
Sure,
but
okay.
on over here you can say whatever you want.
That was horrible. That was so bad. I like, and especially because Greg and I talk about this a lot, that when we watch the monologue, especially if it's somebody who isn't, super seasoned or like we know is going to knock it out of the park, we're kind of just sitting there like stage moms, like biting our nails. And so that's what I was doing for Kieran. And then there was that like so early on, I was like, just kind of like, but I get, and he redeemed himself through, going farther, because at that point we didn't know he was going to like play the clip of him, or maybe he had played the clip, but we didn't know it was going to be sort of like a bigger thing. And so he redeemed himself, but that was a cringe moment for me.
Me, I want uppies.
Yeah.
John, you had said at some point, did you have that there was some reports that he was not doing great during the week, or there was some concerns maybe about if he was going to be able to kind of really pull it off?
Yeah, so we spoke about this in our Patron group a little bit. I think that, we definitely are fortunate that we get some some behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I don't know how overblown this thing is. I never know if it's like one person's opinion about the situation or it's like multiple production sources. I really don't know, but it was interesting that like I was just told, potentially there were some nerves there. And then in combination with that, we did find out there were a lot of like last minute structural changes to sketches. I know one that we found out after the fact for sure was there was going to be a Succession sketch with Tracy Morgan in it. And then they dropped that sketch and put Tracy in the bathroom sketch. So the thing is like, you would think that somebody who's coming from the show they're promoting would insist that the show that the sketch about the show they're promoting is in the episode. Like, it's very rare to me to have that and then have that being cut. So my question is like, was the sketch so bad, or was maybe like was somebody not happy with the way that Kieran was in that particular sketch? Like it's a lot of speculation here, but I just felt like it was important to like let our listeners know on Saturday that like I had heard some things and potentially was like, I don't know what the deal is, but then it didn't come out at all on screen, for me at least. Do either of you have an opinion on that?
I mean, he said in his monologue, how nervous his wife was to be watching him, and that hearing all of this kind of speculation, that seems like was pretty authentic and wasn't just made up. And I am all for authenticity, especially with celebrities and people, who are supposed to like hold it together all the time. So, and I didn't, watching the show, I wouldn't have thought that like they were scrambling last minute to change things that, really weren't working, or, but it is really interesting, the point you make, John, about this Succession episode or sketch and how that's his thing and it got cut anyway.
Yeah, I feel like generally considered, a softball when they try to do something like that, where we're going to do Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, or we're going to get, whoever the person kind of playing their main character, we're going to put it sometime in the top of the show. They've got this big cameo all queued up. So I'm just more morbidly curious about, what did the sketch just not work, or was it whose fault is it? That's what I want to know. Why did we get that one?
Look, and people think like, hey, you're a professional actor, like you can come in and you can do anything. But, it's nerve-wracking for people who maybe haven't done something live and then let alone done sketch comedy before. So like, I don't blame Kieran at all for the nerves, but like as people who evaluate the show, it's something to take into account. Like, hey, we've heard reports that he maybe isn't the most, like the best suited for this. But like I said, really just like everything, whatever decisions they ended up making were for the best. I remember there was a situation last year where I think we had even tweeted it out that there was going to be a Biden and Kamala cold open, that I think it was the one that Martin Short was in season 46. And that was going to be the cold open that night. And then like at like 11:25, they moved that from being the cold open to like 2 commercials in. And it was like such a last minute decision, and they were so much better for it. So it's just like an added layer of interesting details that we get from like, what's really happening over there.
Yeah, just the whole high wire act of it too. I feel like you get a lot of this when they start to do some of the behind the scenes featurettes of like, this just seems like a nightmare directing job. I mean, it's just like obviously super prestigious, but it's just like, yeah, we're 20 minutes into the show, and here comes another page of rewrites, and here comes we have to chop these 30 seconds off here or there, and so I try not to interpret every time they cut a sketch, it means that it got cut from the team because it wasn't good enough. Because I'm sure there's a myriad of factors, but
For sure.
you do wonder that one in particular seemed like it was going to be. It seems like it should be kind of foolproof.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we were talking about the uppies. I won't play it again for Emily. So,
Thank you.
At Red Said It, Chris Red on Twitter is always talking about SNL, and Chris said had to lift him up for that 30-year callback! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Crying face. He killed it! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! So that was pretty cool to see. I think it was Chris and Keenan that ended up picking up Kieran. So Emily, at the end, was it okay in the credits?
It was okay at the end. I mean, I certainly hoped it was going to happen after the monologue, after he sort of begged for it. So yeah, it was very good at that point. And I feel like Chris Red isn't someone who kind of like minces word. Like he wouldn't be saying like he killed it if he didn't think that he killed it. So I think it was like a genuine, like kind of like hurrah at the end there.
Yeah, definitely. We also had Kevin Nealon who jumped in on Instagram and said, posted a photo and said, from SNL last night with host Kieran Culkin, #Succession HBO. I remember lifting him 30 years ago during the Good Nights. My back is still out, #SNL, which is so wonderful to get to hear from Kevin Nealon.
Yeah, Kevin Nealon from one of my favorite eras of the show too. We were trying to track sort of exactly what era of the show each of us were falling in love with it. And that was while I was a little bit too young to get a lot of that live. That was what like the primary Comedy Central rerun segment that I felt like I was getting as a elementary school preteen. So love Kevin Nealon.
I would say that I know I've said this for a long time. I'd say Kevin Nealon is top 5 underrated cast members of all time.
Wow.
Just pure underratedness. Like he's totally overshadowed by Dana and Phil Hartman. But he is just in any other era. Kevin Nealon is such an incredible cast member.
You're right. I feel like he doesn't the same for the same reasons that people love Phil Hartman. They could also love Kevin Nealon, because I think people always like Phil Hartman's so like understated. He's sort of like a glue guy. He's like, doesn't chew the scenery or something. It's like that's the exact same thing could be applied to Kevin Nealon. So I'm with you. We'll start that campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. And my other point to that, by the way, is coming between Dennis Miller and Norm Macdonald on Weekend Update is a rough spot to be in. So I feel like you can't just punish him for something like that. So that's my Kevin Nealon soliloquy. Okay. Men's bathroom. So this was a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun on the podcast this week talking about the men's bathroom sketch. Bowen Yang helped write this sketch with PDD and Chris Red. And Bowen says, "Hi, fellas. Chris and I have a dumb idea that's along the lines of all the weird bathroom chit-chat that happens in men's room. That sort of rushed, bizarrely chummy conversations that happen at the urinals, at the sinks, whatever." And I believe this was a pitch that he was making to his fellow writers as he came up with this idea. So just the most hilarious, fantastic sketch that I just couldn't get enough of. Greg, what were your thoughts?
Same. I was at work this week. It was a number of times where I found myself in this situation, like just finding it resonating more and more. It's almost like when you're in that situation, it's somehow weirder if you don't say something chummy and chit-chatty, which doesn't make any sense. We could also just go in here and be quiet, and that would make a lot. But it's like if I don't say something to my boss right here, I'm being weird. So it's just amazing. I don't know who had said this, but someone had said there was like sort of a Jerry Seinfeld joke put into a sketch. It's just like such an undeniable observation. So yeah, I had thought about that a couple times as people were like teasing each other in the bathroom this week. I'm just like, that was mean as hell. Yeah.
Emily, getting the female perspective on this sketch has been so much fun this week, just to hear everybody's opinion on it. What was yours?
So, first of all, Greg brought up this week that he was surprised that it hadn't been touched before. And when you think about it, like, it seems like such a common denominator type thing that's so awkward that it is kind of weird that like it hasn't come up before. Thinking of that stresses me out to no end. Like, and I've thought about it before. I don't know how that works, how that happens. Greg and I were talking about this also. Women have the thing where like you go, it's a different thing because you go in a closed stall and then you talk over, and it's weird because you can't see each other. But is that less weird than I think like standing next to each other in full view? I think the men's thing is much weirder and much more intense. And I just thought it was such a spot on. I mean, I can't personally speak to it, but I thought it was just hilarious. I mean, because how insanely awkward that must be.
Yeah, and I don't think that men, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think men do the stall thing, but women do. Like, I think women talk to each other from stall to stall, but
Right.
I've never spoken to anybody being in a stall in a bathroom.
Well, I'm sure, like, you know, when you have that privacy after not having it, you're like, I'm not saying anything here. I'm not going to like go out of my way.
Yeah.
It's understandable to me.
Yeah. Also, I was trying to think about like other situations in my life that I can compare this to just like give context on this stuff. And I was thinking that I feel like with men, like if you go to a gym and like you work out and you go to the gym and then like after you go take a shower, like oftentimes like you know how there's like those open showers that like everybody just like has a shower, you go like do your thing or whatever. Like guys talk to each other in those showers. Like when you're standing there like naked taking a shower. But I don't think women do. So I feel like that's another thing.
We often, I mean, I feel like I've been in a fair amount of gyms, and none that I've been in as a teenager.
John and Emily just want everyone to know that they work out a lot. They work out a lot.
Just a smooth thing right there, just throwing that in there, humble brag.
Yep.
But I've never seen a women's locker room that has like the communal showers. I guess in high school, there's that like stereotypical like girls locker room thing. That was there. But certainly, yeah, I don't know if that would be happening. The conversation would be happening between women, even if it was open. I feel like I don't think so. But we do have in the locker room then post shower. I feel like there are women who are much more comfortable chatting naked than others. So, but the shower thing I think would take the cake for awkwardness.
Yeah,
but that's why it's just like it's one of those things that's so undeniable that you're like, how has no one come up with this? Is probably the good evidence of just like a well conceived joke.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I was just look, I was just thinking about it. It was like there are differences here, and I don't know why people don't talk about this stuff more, but it was really great that Bowen brought this up this week. Also we have Celeste on Instagram at Celeste Rogan says, ooh God, I love when Bowen Yang deconstructs masculinity. Yeah, that's so funny. Okay, we had a great picture from, and I'll try and actually, well, let me skip that one. I'm going to come back to it, but let's talk about Cecily Strong on Weekend Update. So we brought it up earlier, and we had some really incredible commentary also on social media after the fact, let alone obviously this piece on Update. So Saturday Night Live posted Goober the Clown, who had an abortion when she was 23, up on Twitter. And Sarah K. Silverman, a former cast member, says, it takes real lips to do something so personal and true in comedy. I love you, Cecily Strong. So, Emily, what were your thoughts on seeing Cecily's piece on Update?
First of all, I have to say, like, I've never heard the phrase "it takes real lips," and now I'm going to use it all the time. Thanks, Sarah Silverman. Man, this was just, it was dark and it was funny and it was poignant. It was just like, it was uncomfortable to watch, certainly. Like I was watching it, and even as I was like, this is good that this is happening, it was uncomfortable to watch. And like upon rewatches, you know, it's really like the humor in it has really been able to take center stage. And just, you know, like the levels of humor, the clown thing, the physical comedy of it, how the horn doesn't work, the googly eyes or whatever. And then just, you know, obviously the layers of dark comedy and just crazy truth that she was able to put out there. I mean, that's just like on so many levels, it was just excellent. And I think that, I remember watching it on Saturday and just thinking, like, what is the fallout going to be? Like, what are people's, and I knew it was going to go both ways, but I think it's really been surprising the positive response that this has gotten. I didn't expect it to be so embraced, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't know what people were going to think either, but I mean, we have had I don't know what the right terminology is, but the not the nicest comments sometimes on Instagram over the last week when people have been tagging us in their opinions about this piece. But for the most part, I think people are really supportive of what they got to see, which is really, really nice. And I'm really pleased to see that. Greg, what were your thoughts when you saw Cecily's piece on Update?
Same thing too. I hadn't heard this story. I haven't read her book. I know others that have kind of followed this closely know that this is something that she's talked about before. But yeah, again, just the construction of this joke is just a really kind of high art for something that's about a clown with googly eyes and a spinny bow tie. A couple times is bring her like manic energy that she's bringing to it. I think also really makes it, because it seems like, you know, the crowd doesn't always know what to make of it either. We were talking about, this is a little bit kind of the Wayne We Notice. It seems like kind of the precursor to this of, so trying to laugh through the pain. And this one, not that we need to always compare the things that are vaguely similar, but this one definitely resonated a little bit harder. And the fact that she was able to kind of put these props together right after some of her big stingers. You know, you think about when she tells the line about she coming into the waiting room and there's the book of women who left their stories, and then puts the googly eyes straight on. Is just, I tend to think someone who's been on the show that long is fearless, but it's probably not true to some extent in the level of courage and bravery it took to even pitch this, let alone come out and deliver it with the force that she had. Just no surprises here, but we love Cecily for it.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that obviously it was, I don't know if it was a makeup person or someone behind the scenes, obviously, that nose got added last minute. And
oh, cool.
I think that is like, that really makes this clown outfit and just makes it like, so like not even look like her, you know, is just like the corny, like red nose. So I just thought that was interesting that maybe that hadn't been there the whole time. I just threw that in.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't know that either. There was just like so many good thoughts about this particular piece that she did. And I know we spoke about this earlier in the week, but really just like the fact that everybody thought that she was leaving after last season, and she came back and she had, not that this has to do with like her role on Saturday Night Live by any means, but just like really just the fact that she came back and she had this like really vulnerable, memorable moment on the show, I think just like is just so incredible, because like we could have just not had this because she could have left and she didn't. And like, I just love that we have this universe where this did happen. So that was really cool. We had at the Jeff Richards show, one of the former cast members, and he has a great deepfake podcast as well. Jeff says Cecily's been at the show a long time, and with that seniority gives her the ability to do sharp segments like this, which aren't just funny and well done, but really important. Hats off to the writers for this bit of commentary. So really just very nice words towards Cecily. Okay. Finally, we brought this up on the roundtable, but I felt like it was important to do again in case anybody, didn't catch. We sometimes do a lot of coverage during the week. Somebody didn't catch this. This is from Cecily herself, who posted on her Instagram story. She said, "I work with the best people on earth. Thank you, Anna Dresden and Ken Sublett, for writing with me, and thank you, Doyle Bird, for being the first person I could text on Monday asking, is this an insane idea or ... because she's not only a great friend but an amazing producer. Thank you to Colin Jost and Che and all of SNL for being on board immediately and giving this clown a seat at your table. I didn't tell my own wonderful and supportive mom for years, and Saturday I just told live TV. So just thought I would bring that up again. It's just really incredible and emotional."
Yeah, and I love the call out to both to Colin and Che too. We talked about this a little bit this week, of the fact that she was able to kind of do this within the world of their update too, where she's going to be able to kind of take a couple shots at Colin in the midst of this. It's sort of, oh great, all women are clowns. It's sort of like, it's different than I think some people were making the argument of like, oh, she just kind of like used this update piece to like kind of make a political statement, you know. So first of all, go get out of there with that. But the fact that I think it's justified in the fact that she was able to kind of come in and incorporate these pieces that are sort of in the world that the two most tenured, or at least the one most tenured update anchor of all time, have set up for her. So.
Yeah, you're right, Greg, when she said this.
Okay, Colin Jost thinks women are clowns. Cool.
Yeah.
Such a great line.
Yeah.
So good. So just to finish off on our social media segment from this week, here is a great photo, and this is from John Higgins. I believe this is probably from the SNL after party, but we got to see here, brought it up on screen if you're watching the YouTube version of our podcast. We have Sarah Squirm with Kieran Culkin and James Austin Johnson over here celebrating at the after party. So really just fun. Seems like everybody's having a good time. And I'm really glad that they're able to go to these after parties now. And they seem to be great because I know that the new cast in 46 was not able to go to any after parties due to COVID.
And they're not only at an after party, they're like touching faces. They're
Yes. Full on.
good stuff.
Yeah, that was really fun. Okay, so that's our social media for the week. Let's talk some patron feedback questions that we got this week. So Greg and Emily, I shared our document with you where we had all the feedback questions. Emily, anything you saw in the document that you would like to start with?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I guess maybe we should wait to get to this week's.
We'll start with the stuff from this week, I guess.
Yeah. See. Someone had asked if Dion Warwick was the oldest person to appear on SNL. And did we know Betty White was 88 when she was on? Did we figure out how old?
So that's okay. That's from Naomi Weiss. Naomi says, is Dion Warwick the oldest person to appear on SNL? I know Betty White was on there, but I don't know their ages. Yeah. So in the first few years, there was Ruth Gordon, who was also 80. Dion Warwick was 80. Not that Dion hosted, but still. Betty White was 88. And there's also, in the third season, when they had the Anyone Can Host competition, there was a woman named Miskelle Spillman who was voted to be a host on season 3 of the show, and she was also 80. So, it's fun when we get some older people coming on the show. It spans the generations.
I also thought Jeremy Boulard's comment, is low host screen time sometimes a good formula for a great episode? And Greg, you made a note about this. I think definitely. I think obviously when you have a strong host, especially when it's someone tenured like Jason Sudeikis or like Kristen Wiig or Tina Fey, who can come in and, just knock it out of the park, and that, they're going to fuel the episode. But I think, and again, not that Kieran was a dud or like a bad host or anything, but I think that does give the cast a chance to step up a little bit. So I agreed that, the cast is the fuel for a good episode, Greg, as you said, but I think that when they can take those pre-taped sketches with a host, those do tend to do better live during the show when you have a host that's not maybe as comfortable up there.
Yeah, I mean, just want to say thank you, Jeremy, for sending in that question. If you do want to send questions to us, by the way, for any of our feedback shows and you're listening in, we do put out a Google form every week on Twitter, and you could also answer our story on Instagram as well to get in your questions into the show. So, Greg, over to you on, is low host screen time sometimes a good formula for a great episode?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it like this, but I think it's kind of an interesting model. I'd be kind of interested for other folks in the chat or in sort of the diehard community here. I think Emily and I, the reason why we started doing the podcast is we just really love this current cast, and we really love that's sort of why we come to the show. We're not picking out, oh, this looks like an interesting host, we'll check this out, or whatever it is, and and therefore our favorite hosts are almost always the former cast members. They know what they're doing, and just because we're two basic bitches watching SNL, we like what we like. But when it's someone who is either like an actor, right, so Kieran Culkin or Rami Malek, or in when we're just like white knuckling it through, we're going to bring a non-performer in, right? You know, what's it going to be like when Elon Musk hosts? What happens when Kim Kardashian hosts? That's when I think you really see the power of the cast. So in examples like the Elon Musk episode, which I think is pretty universally derided, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but in that episode, there was a bunch of things that we liked, including the Uli show. We like Murder Dirter. Ego Wodum comes out and does a weary mother in her darkest hour as the mother in Disneyland. You know, Chad on Mars, and then Miley Cyrus was in that episode. Just was in the cold open. She was in Chad on Mars. Her performances were amazing. So that I mean, she's obviously not a current cast member, but it's just sort of the host. I think can only do so much damage. And if we wanted to take the Elon Musk episode as the barometer for that, there's still a lot in there, and that's where you really see the power of the cast. So I kind of like this thought though of the less you see of maybe a non-former cast member is a good recipe.
I think that the answer to this question is, I think it's a really tough question, honestly, because I think that I don't know that this is a numbers-based question. I don't know that the formula for a great episode is necessarily dictated by the screen time of the host. I think that this is more of an eye test type of thing. And I think that what's in the history of the show, what's made great episodes is when a host blends into the cast seamlessly. And I don't know that has, there may be a minimum threshold of screen time that justifies what is considered a good episode of SNL. Like if this person gets less than that, is that better or worse? Possibly. But I think that in general, if the cast members blend well, then you're bound to have a good episode of the show. And I think those are some of the best shows in the early days of SNL, is like when people like Buck Henry, one of the original people who hosted 10 times, he was like another cast member. He was like the next part. Steve Martin, they were like as much a part of the 70s cast. So that's just my 2 cents on this question.
Yeah, maybe that lends itself into one of the other questions that had come in here from Akona. Will we see Kieran on SNL again? And it kind of had me thinking a little bit about, what necessitates the repeat hosts. And it seems like, at least to me, you're either undeniably famous or undeniably good on the show. It's sort of like Justin Timberlake is both, right? But Justin Bieber is one of those. So it's just, he's going to be so popular. It's just undeniable whether you put him in. But I think we really liked when we saw Halsey, which maybe she's more famous than we two losers realized, because we had never heard of her before she had been announced.
I'd heard of Halsey.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Easy. But she came in and I thought did an awesome job. And when she came back and as the musical guest this year, they found a place for her in one of the sketches. So I think, she's someone that would be, because she was able to really come in and be game and deliver as a performer, would be someone that would come back. I don't know if Kieran Culkin fits into either of those. I'm not sure if he's quite fit. Not necessarily deriding him. I thought he did a perfectly serviceable job, but I don't know that it was so much that they're like, we got to really come back and see what other characters he's got,
Yeah. I mean, I would say absolutely not. There's no chance he would be back because like Greg said, perfectly serviceable job, not anything that was like hard to watch or anything like that, but just with the amount of people that there are still that we could see or people that they could bring back. I don't think he's one of those people.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think it's I don't think like based on his own merits they would bring him back. I think that or at least as a host, I think that it's possible if Jeremy Strong, Kendall Roy from Succession was ever to host, if they were going to go back to the Succession I could see them bringing in Kieran Culkin for something, but I just can't necessarily see that there was anything here that was like, oh, we have to have him back again. Yeah, I just think there's just like so many other people out there, obviously, that I would bring in before, but he was fine. Like, but I think we all think he was good.
Yep.
Yeah, Nicole in the chat too, Anya Taylor-Joy. Right. I think that's a good one call out.
That's an excellent call. Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. Greg, anything else that stood out to you as a question like you really wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I like the thought. Richard Knipe spoke about Chloe Fineman not getting a lot of screen time in the round table, what can she do to get more time? I think kind of lends to our earlier conversation about what can we do to get the women on screen. Sort of the tried and true answer there is, the direct to camera update pieces. I've heard cast members talk about this a lot. Chris Rock has said it a number of times, of sort of when you feel like you're getting boxed out elsewhere, this is it's the one way you can kind of will yourself into the show. Again, being a generally positive person, I like to think that if you're an impressionist, you're always going to have opportunities fed to you. Although the counter argument to that is that Melissa Villaseñor has seemed to be kind of relegated to the second string over the past 2 seasons, which we hate. We would just love for no cast members to be left out, and for the show to be 6 hours long, and everyone ever leaves. That would be the other thing. We would just like the cast to grow exponentially, and for the show to get longer and longer. But
Chevy Chase would still be falling down every week.
Yes, exactly. I would love that. I would watch all 12 hours that episode would have to be. But so that would be my only worry, is that if something like that happens, and I don't know if there's something around now they have another master impressionist on the staff, does that cut into her and Melissa Villaseñor's world? But I'd like to think she was super strong last year. She's got all the skill sets that you want from someone. I'm feeling positive that she'll come back.
Emily, what's your take on this?
I think that they gave her so much good stuff last season, and I'm disappointed that this season has started out like this for her. I think I agree with Greg that you would hope that someone who's so good at impressions like she is will always have a spot, even if she doesn't come out with something like radically new, that they will bring her back for things that she's been really good with in the past. But yeah, I don't want to see her go the way of Melissa, who I think we don't see anywhere close to enough of. I don't really know the reason for that, but I'm hoping it doesn't happen, because I think last season they gave her a ton of stuff to do.
Yeah, last season was really good for her. I mean, Monette's in the chat says do a Britney Spears cold open, and like that obviously was absolutely killer for her in season 46. Yeah. And I think that I'm not pressing the panic button yet, because outside of the show, obviously, like her PR is just unbelievable. But I think that I will start panicking on Chloe this season when we have a few more female hosts and we're not seeing her still. I think that is when I'm going to be like, okay, what's happening here? Because I just didn't expect this coming into the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A lot of mouths to feed, I guess. I mean, maybe that's the charitable way to put it. There's there's still been a lot of good stuff on the show, but you're right. I think I'll agree to press the panic button if she's still this underrepresented by Christmas.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we have a question from Ike Moore, one of our patrons. Says, based on his cameo, do you think we could see Tracy Morgan host again in the future? So any Tracy Morgan fans in the house?
100%.
For sure.
There's no way they don't bring him back.
Yeah. I think that someone like Tracy is like, Greg and I have talked about this, like someone that's more or less, not saying that he doesn't have anything to do, but like more or less like on standby, that if you don't have a host, or if you're really like looking for someone who's going to be like a fan favorite that's going to hit it out of the park, I mean, if Tracy's available, like why wouldn't you bring him back?
Yeah, I think he's kind of in the same conversation as like Kristen Wiig, who has just kind of got an open door. It seems like we see her once a season for something. So I think it's more of if he for some reason wouldn't want to, which I've never seen any indication. He's loved by the whole community and by us. So confident that he'll be back.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a crazy take, and like I just think that Tracy's the general opinion on Tracy is much more positive post him being a cast member on the show than when he was a cast member on the show. And there could be a million reasons why. Basically Kenan Thompson like came in and replaced him, when he was finished as a cast member. But I don't know, but I'm so excited to see it, because I always enjoyed him on the show. But I think it's a combination of him being on 30 Rock and people loved him on that show, and obviously the 30 Rock SNL connections. And then he's come in and hosted twice, and obviously he had that like really horrible accident near SNL 40. I think just like the love for Tracy has gone up tremendously in the last 10 years. So like, it's kind of nice to see that.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. It's something about 30 Rock has enhanced his SNL reputation, in addition to the fact that he's a great talk show guest host.
I mean, and I'll be honest, I was tuning in to SNL when Tracy was on there, but I didn't have anywhere near the exposure I had before he was on 30 Rock. And now,
Yeah.
It's just that changed everything.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of people kind of felt the same thing. And I'm like, here, I'm just looking right now. I'm looking at the segments that he has been in. Tracy is 47th among cast members all time in sketches on the show. So I don't think he was like, when he was on the show from 1996 to 2003, like there was a lot of times where Tracy like was not a big part of the show. So I just think like people now think Tracy Morgan was like a huge part of SNL. He was in as many sketches as, let's see, he's in the range of like Nassim Pedrad is like about the amount of sketches that he's been in. And I think that people would, if you go back and you think about it, would probably consider Tracy like a more accomplished cast member than Nassim on the show. So it's an interesting comparison when you look at some of these numbers, but I just thought that was interesting to point out.
Love that. Love those stats.
Yeah. Okay. This is from, thank you, whoever keeps sending in these questions as sketch titles, thank you. But this comes in from Strong Stream.
Sounds like your stream's coming along really well over there.
Thank you for that. Said, was Bathroom the best sketch of the year? If not, why are you wrong? So,
Yeah.
Greg,
This question is mean as hell. Yeah. I was not ready to crown this the number one, but I was starting to kind of put some nominees up here of new sketches from this year. I would put up Parent Teacher Conference from the Owen Wilson episode, The Dream Guy from the Kim Kardashian episode, School Board Meeting. Parent Teacher Conference was Jason Sudeikis. School Board Meeting was the one from Owen Wilson. I know, Emily, you were big on the Angelo bug assembly. So I don't know if there's any other nominees in there, or if people in the chat have other.
I mean,
nominees.
I do think, having talked about it and seeing the response that it got, the bathroom sketch was so not topical, but so kind of universally, because even women watching that can get how awkward that is. I can see why it was probably a really like well-received sketch. Like Greg said, I do love the Angelo sketch from the Rami Malek episode. Ladies Night song from when Kim Kardashian hosted, Bug Assembly, like Greg said. So those are a few of my like contenders for best so far, but I do think the bathroom sketch was very, very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we
me,
say,
sorry,
any of the update pieces or, what up with that is not a new one. So I'm creating arbitrary rules for our meaningless banter, which is, I think, how you're supposed to podcast. So, but if those are in there, I think there would be a few other updates and things like that I would put in there.
Yeah. Hashtag potting.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I would say the mattress sketch, the parent teacher conference from Jason's episode, and the men's room are like definitely my top three. And also like honorable mention to the cutting cable, which we didn't talk about this week, but such really a funny sketch as well. Okay, let's turn to this coming week with host Jonathan Majors and musical guest Taylor Swift. So this is a question from Jacob. Will Taylor Swift overshadow Majors this week? Emily, what do you think?
I don't think there's any way that she couldn't. So full disclosure, I am not familiar with Majors. I think that I've been wanting to see The Harder They Fall. Is that the correct name of the movie? I've been wanting to see that. I did watch a bunch of clips of him on various talk shows, and he seems like a super charismatic, just like delightful guy. And I'm very excited to see what he does. But I just think that when you have Taylor Swift, and I'm not sure overshadow is even the right word. I don't think that people will not care about how he performs. But I think that she's Taylor Swift. I mean, she's going to be, I hope we get to see her in some sketches because we know that she can definitely do that. And I think even in a time when she doesn't really have anything new out, she hasn't really had any kind of like social media or media dust ups recently, but I think there's still just like no way her as Taylor Swift can't be kind of like the major point there.
Yeah, Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody saw Pete Davidson's guest spot on Late Night with Seth Meyers this week, but they were talking a little bit about just the dynamic of Taylor Swift specifically, because it's this week, but that there's sort of like, well, you kind of get the sense that at SNL, everybody's famous. This is like the center of the universe or whatever. But then someone like Taylor Swift comes by, or Justin Bieber or whoever, and you're like, oh, there's another level of fame above this. So I'm interested. I'm definitely going to be following the Standby Line ladies this week, because I'd be fascinated to see what that scene is going to be like with the Swifties descending. So I don't think it's possible, no matter how good a job Majors does. I mean, I suppose this community will probably have their own response versus what the rest of the world will be. So
I do want to call out, I just noticed in the chat, Nicole had no idea that this is a very big time for Taylor Swift. Apparently she's releasing something tomorrow, a short film, as well as the Taylor's version of Red. So just kidding. Taylor definitely does have stuff to promote, so makes a lot more sense. So I think even more now, yes.
But the tour is still suspended, I think, because she had a big thing, and she's got a pretty large immovable object there. But as far as I could tell, once they had paused it during COVID, they hadn't restarted it. So that was going to be my other question: is she going to come with the full band, or is she going to try to come out and just play the hits kind of thing? So it'll be interesting to see if they do something special.
It's definitely a big question. I know we did get a question that said from Rachel, said 2 standard Taylor performances or 1 10-minute one, and I think Monette has the same thing in the chat. So we'll see. I guess that'll be. Do you guys have a guess which one it'll be?
Costume changes that's too big of an opportunity to combine into one.
Yeah.
Just set changes, costume changes.
Yeah.
I think if it was like the Christmas show, I think you would get like a 10-minute performance. I don't know that they would do that this week. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents. As for the Swift overshadowing Majors this week, I was trying to think about like who Jonathan Majors remind me of. I did see Jonathan Majors, spoiler alert, at the end of Loki, and he was just super dynamic, and he was just like really incredible. And we were talking about this a bit on the roundtable. He reminds me a lot of Donald Glover, and I think that Donald Glover is like one of like my favorite comedians there is, and like actors and stuff like that. I was watching Donald Glover stuff from when he was like really, really young on Derek Comedy. And I just find that Jonathan Majors has the same like crazy personality that can like be totally normal in one scene and then totally like batshit crazy in another. So I think that like from what I saw, it seems like Jonathan Majors could be made for SNL. So like underreported story, but he could be very good this week.
Interesting. I consider my hopes all the way up.
Okay. Not to overhype, but that's what we do here, right? So, all right. This is from @NolaDon _ says, will Taylor do any sketches? So, Greg, what do you think?
I bet they do. I do. Yeah. Unless there's some sort of major performance that they're getting her ready for. If they're doing, the 10-minute thing, or if there's going to be something that's going to have her otherwise occupied. I think if you're going to have her on the show, trying to maximize her as much as possible. I was going back to the time they hosted. I don't know if you got, I hesitate to say stats on this show with the Masters around, but I thought I'd counted four times and hosted once.
For Taylor?
For Taylor.
Or who's
Taylor Swift.
She was, she hosted once and she was a musical guest 3 other times. Yeah.
So the driving PSA sketch, I think, is the one that really stands out to me, where she's wearing like the full braces headgear. And it's alternating between Kristen Wiig and Jason Sudeikis in the car as they're doing various dangerous driving maneuvers. So that one I always really liked when she was really, really young. She must have been, what, 18, 19 in that show or something like that.
So that was from 2009. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think Taylor was born, as we know, in 1989. So,
True.
so she's 20. Yeah. that's my Taylor Swift knowledge.
Nice one.
Yeah. So I think that, and also the same, I was going to say she was also in Seth Rogen's monologue in 2014 as well. She popped in for an appearance. Yeah. So we could get some good stuff from her. I wonder, I know that people love her monologue from 2009. I wonder if potentially we're going to break the solo monologue thing and Taylor's going to walk onto the monologue this week. That'd be interesting.
Love that.
Yeah. Emily, anything else on Taylor doing sketches?
I just saw it pop into the chat. Someone referenced, Monette referenced the roommate sketch with Nassim Pedrad. And that's kind of one of the ones I thought like I was the only one who remembered that. I feel like I quote that all the time. So I really hope that we get to see Taylor in some sketches. I feel like she's someone like Justin Bieber, like Harry Styles. Like if they're around and a musical guest in any way willing, they're gonna show up in a sketch at least once. So I hope so.
Nassim Pedrad, we lost you too soon.
Yeah.
To the Mulaney show, right?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
she could have been so much more ahead of Tracy Morgan on the all-time sketches.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Last question that we got here. This is from Mark Carver. Says, will there be any sketches based on Major's work? Loki, Lovecraft Country, The Harder They Fall. So I think we touched on this a little bit, but Greg, anything that you can predict we'll get to see from Major's?
Yeah, I guess the Loki appearance is not that big, right? I mean, I haven't seen the whole show, but I get the sense it's more his character emerges late in the show. So it's maybe if they were going to do something, it would be from what was I going to say? Lovecraft Country, or I think he's got a more central role. I like it when they take sort of the big, the people that are in these big spectacles and then put them into like into a stage with like some crappy background, but like perfect makeup. We mentioned the Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, where it's Kate and 80 have like paddled in their paddle boat up thinking that they found this island of lesbians. I think it's just like, because the movies are so like kind of self-serious and big. And then if you like take them and distill them down to the SNL world, I think those always tickle me. So I wonder if they would do something like that, but I don't know if anybody else has a thought.
Well, I just think if they were going to do a Loki thing, they would have done it with Owen Wilson. But is it possible that they can get Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, to potentially cameo on the show? That would be an interesting question. I know that's a lot of people have like wanted him to host for a long time. He's really great actor. So and he does have a really great scene with Jonathan Majors on the show. So on Loki. So the question is like, would they potentially do something? I see Casey in the chat says it's about time they do a sketch referencing Marvel stuff. It's been a while. I mean, we had a few Marvel things, obviously, at the beginning when, the Avengers were super big, and Chris Hemsworth did a very funny one with Bobby Moynihan. I remember where he like ripped off his arm or something like that. So it's been a while. So it would be interesting to see if what they would end up doing with that. And Emily, any thoughts on, I know you said you haven't seen Jonathan Majors work too much, but anything you could predict?
Yeah. Not too much there, but I think it would be amazing if they could get Tom Hiddleston in. And I don't think like too out of the realm of possibility, right? We've seen, some really like hard hitting stars show up seemingly out of nowhere. So if they're doing, if they have Jonathan Majors on and there's that Loki connection, I would love that. I'm really excited to see, like I said, I have only ever watched him as himself, and I'm excited to see how he does.
Wait, I just completely forgot that Tom Hiddleston used to date Taylor Swift, right? That was the whole thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just completely,
Oh,
sorry. Thank you, Casey, for in the chat for reminding me about that. So yeah, I forget that, but that would be kind of crazy. And that would be that definitely headline worthy if he showed up for this episode now. So I guess we'll see.
Man.
Okay. Well, that does it for our feedback questions. Greg, any final thoughts on season 47 that you just want to put out there on the podcast while you're on the SNL network?
No, it just honestly it's been awesome to kind of get a little bit closer connected to the community, both through the SNL network stuff and then a little bit through our own pod. So it feels like one of the reasons why we had started it was to pull out the positives. I felt like all I was seeing is people hating on the current cast and then waiting until they're on 30 Rock to come back and then talk about how much they've always loved them. So that was the original conceit, but it's clear that there's a much bigger community of people that feel the same way about the good work that they're doing every week. So I'm excited for the rest of it.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to have you two a part of this. So it's really fun to get to talk to both of you. Emily, any final thoughts on 47?
Big hugs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll echo what Greg said. I kind of, have grown up and spent my adult life being the only one of my, not only one, Greg, but one of the few people I know who really, really loves and can just like talk at length about SNL. And seeing now that there are so many people, more people in this community than I ever thought, is just fantastic. And so not only am I excited because we're not super far into season 47, so I'm excited for what's next, but just now super excited to be connected with all these other fans.
Definitely. Okay, so I don't know who's going to do the plugs for your show, but Greg, Emily, one of you, let everybody know where they could listen to your show and
Greg,
do the full plug. Yeah.
It's all Greg.
Saturday Night Vibes drops usually the Monday after the show. It's a all positive recap show. So once you've gone, you got to go through the hot take show with SNL Network, then you do the round table, and then you get SNL Vibes to just feel the goodness. It is borderline pandering in its positivity of the show, and ATN knows that you're on TV, so that's why she's a diva and she wants to strut her stuff. So highly recommend everybody check it out.
Absolutely. We just got one last question in the chat, so I just want to throw it out to you because our friend Jamie asked in the chat, any potential ideas for December hosts? So do you want to just give me a quick prediction? Anything from December, Greg?
December. I mean, I've always wanted either the Broad City duo to host or for Key and Peele to host. So this is just, I don't know what would the reason would be to bring any of them on. I don't think they're still working on anything together, but that's just my pipe dream.
Yeah, we got Key, but we didn't get Peele.
We got Key. Yeah.
Emily, what about you? Any predictions for December?
I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like December is a time when they've historically brought in some really big names. Like I think was it the Tina and Amy? Did that happen? I think in December.
Yep.
I think Tina and or Amy have both happened around the holidays. Just like those like really big names. Kristen Wiig was a Christmas show person. So I certainly wouldn't complain about someone like that.
Jack Black hosting 2005 was maybe my favorite, certainly my favorite monologue of all time, and maybe my favorite episode because it also had Lazy Sunday.
Box.
Yeah.
Oh, Lazy Sunday. Excuse me. Yes. Dick in the Box was the next year at Christmas, but yes, Lazy Sunday.
King Kong monologue song and Lazy Sunday. It's outrageous.
Yeah, great episode. So yeah, thank you guys both so much for joining us. It was just wonderful to get to meet you and have you a part of our Patron community, and I hope that you two will join us again on a podcast in the future for everything that's happening on the SNL Network. So let me just give a quick rundown to the listeners in case you missed some of our coverage in the last couple of weeks. We had a superfan takeover where we talked about the best Halloween sketches. So I know we're pretty much into November now, but in case you wanted something to listen to before the next show, that is a really fun one hosted by Sammy. We got Haynes, Haskell, and Bill on that one. We also spoke to Judy Belushi-Pisano, which is the wife of John Belushi, and we got to catch up with her and hear stories about the early days at Saturday Night Live. That was really fun and exciting to get to hear her stuff. She even sang us a song at the end of the podcast, a song that was in the end of the documentary Belushi. So that was really, really cool. And then we had our hot take show, our roundtable, and now this show. So I hope you are enjoying all your plenty of coverage, including everything at Saturday Night Vibes. And join us again this Saturday night for the hot take show right after Jonathan Majors and Taylor Swift to catch all of our hot takes on everything that we get to see. So hopefully we'll have lots of Swifties in the chat joining us. That'll be fun. To never miss a show, please subscribe to us at the SNL Network on YouTube or any podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can follow us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and you can follow me at John Schneider 24 for any time you want to talk to me about anything. So thank you so much, Greg and Emily and everybody in the chat for hanging out with us on this Thursday afternoon, and we will see you on Saturday night. Have a good one, everybody.